Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Travel Mug Podcast. As always, I am joined by my podcasting partner, Jen. We are very excited today to be joined by Cary Lowe and his wife, Trish, all the way from California. Cary is a two-time author with his most recent book, On Two Legs and Three Wheels, The Travel Adventures of a Couple Overcoming Age and Disability, which has brought them to the show today. Trish has multiple sclerosis and uses a mobility scooter. Cary and Trish have continued to travel the world and have adventures leading ultimately to Cary writing this book to share their travel stories. We think it is a super important topic and not one that we've really explored before on the podcast, so we are grateful to have you both here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. So I want to start with your obvious love of travel. Where does that come from? When did you first catch the travel bug?
I think we both grew up in families that traveled a lot. I grew up in Europe, and distances, of course, they were much smaller. So back in those days, we drove all over Europe in my childhood. And when we moved to the United States, we continued to travel as a family. And then once I left home, I continued to travel independently. And Trish lived her whole life here in the U.S., but her family was also very travel prone.
I grew up in Detroit, and my father, in particular, my family was really into, seeing the USA. So he would pile us all in the station wagon, and we would go all over the place, drive from Detroit to California. We did that a number of times.
Wow.
And so,
Wow.
yeah, very brave parents, because we were little. But it was great, and that was my experience. So I was
and that was something that tied us together right from the start, was our mutual love of travel and new experiences, new places, and so on. So that in some ways, I would say this book almost wrote itself because we had so many stories to tell.
Definitely. I love that. My husband and I are very similar. We both love to travel, and it's sort of a tie that really binds. Obviously, Jen and her husband are the same. So I think that can be a really great thing to share as a couple.
Yeah.
I do want to ask, in terms of being a disabled traveler, what do you think in terms of advice may disabled travelers need to consider when booking travel, and how does that factor into your trip planning process?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think
I'll
the
let
number
Cary
one
start.
bit of advice we'd give any disabled traveler or their companions, families, and so on is be flexible.
Yeah.
Do your research, plan well, but ultimately be flexible, because you will encounter obstacles. Some of them will be insurmountable. So you have to have contingency plans. But the key to enjoying a vacation trip or any kind of travels when you're limited in any way, but especially physically, is that you're able to deal with these things and not have them ruin your experience. And if you maintain that kind of flexibility, you can go almost anywhere. You may be limited in the extent of your explorations and so on, but there are very few places that you can't go. I mean, we went clear to the Arctic Ocean, and just had a fantastic experience. So, that's, I think, certainly my number one advice is that flexibility.
And smile a lot.
Yeah, because you're
I'm
going to need to
serious.
ask people for help along the way.
Yeah.
And it's and most people are happy to help.
They want to help.
Yeah.
And
But a smile and a gracious demeanor takes you a long way to getting people to be of assistance.
I think that that's honestly amazing life advice in general. I think that those things can take you a long way, and I think I was thinking when you were talking about flexibility that it almost comes back to the type of attitude that you have going into it to
Mm-hmm.
start with, being understanding that things can happen. However, will you let those inconveniences ruin your time, or do you
Mm-hmm.
roll with the flow essentially? And it certainly sounds like the attitude is a big part of it.
It
No,
is.
very much so.
Yeah. How do you start trip planning? Do you like ask people for advice, or do you just choose somewhere where you want to go and then research how you might be able to navigate it?
You want to? Yeah.
Well, I think we start with where we want to go,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't worry about whether it's going to be accessible. Because again, our experience has been in even the most inaccessible places, you can make it work. There's always people who want to assist you, help you, whatever.
Mhm.
And don't be afraid to accept their help. I mean, don't insult them.
Yeah.
Don't say, "Oh, I don't know, I'm okay." Just say, "Well, thank you. I appreciate." And I think that's so
Yeah.
important, that not feeling uncomfortable being
Mhm.
assisted
Mhm.
as you go along, particularly when you're in a place you don't know, when you're visiting for the first time.
Mhm.
And you say, "Oh, thank you. I've never been here before," and that kind of thing. And they'll love it. They love it.
Mhm. But once we've selected a location, then the planning does begin,
Right.
the research, especially if it's a place we haven't been before.
Yeah.
And these days, there's so much information available online. Most countries, regions, cities have websites dedicated to tourism and travel. Some even have specific websites dedicated to disabled travel. That's becoming more common.
Right.
So there's quite a bit of information that you can glean from those sites. But then you really need to get more specific. Let's say a website suggests a half a dozen hotels in a given city or on an island or someplace that are characterized as accessible. You can't just assume that that's all you need to know,
Sure.
because the definition of accessibility varies so much
Yeah.
from place to place.
Right.
Here in the United States, we have the Americans with Disability Act, which sets pretty clear standards for accessibility in public places and accommodations. But most places don't have something quite that specific.
Right.
And when you talk to someone even at a travel agency or a hotel, you need to be very precise about what you need to know. So, for example, does a room have a bathroom with grab bars at the toilet? Does it have a roll-in shower without a step? How much room is there around the beds for a scooter or wheelchair to maneuver, to get from the lobby to the room, or
Yeah.
to the restaurant, or to the swimming pool? Uh, are all of those routes of travel without steps, or are there elevators?
And
And
sometimes you'll find that people have never even thought about it,
Mhm.
because they don't.
Of
If you don't
course, of
need to worry about
course.
it. And
Yeah.
I find that what really helps is, let me put it this way. Imagine yourself, if you had to travel on wheels, if you could only go on wheels, take a look around the places I need to go, from the lobby to my room, from my
Mhm.
room to the restaurant, from my room to the pool, whatever. Can I get there on wheels?
Mhm.
And
Right.
that really helps.
Yeah, and even then, there are differences between accessibility, say, for wheelchairs and scooters.
Yeah.
Right.
Right,
Okay.
that scooters have small wheels. They can't get over some bumps or small steps that a wheelchair could. On the other hand, wheelchairs are a lot heavier, and so they will sink into soft ground or gravel, or non-solid surfaces more easily than a scooter will. So these are things that you learn from experience, but that the people you're talking to may very well never have even considered before. So
Mhm.
again, very precise questioning helps a lot. Even then, just to give you a quick example of how even the best research doesn't always get you what you were hoping for. We're, Slovenia, where we were a few years ago, is trying very hard to be accessible on a national level. They even have a website dedicated to accessibility. So in the capital city there of Ljubljana, we found a hotel, the only one we could find that could offer an accessible room. And in most respects, the room was accessible, but there was one important quirk. That was that because this was an old building that had been retrofitted, the entrance to the bathroom involved a very tight 90-degree turn once you got through the doorway. Well, it was just too tight a turn for the scooter to make. So fortunately on that trip, we had a walker along, and Trish was still mobile enough to be able to use a walker. So that saved the day. And they were apologetic. They said, "Geez, we just never realized that it would be that difficult for someone on a wheelchair or scooter to make that turn." And no, they didn't have any room that had an easier entry. So it's just an example of how even when you do your homework as well as you can, you got to be prepared for the unexpected and prepare as well as you can. Bring along whatever you need to carry out contingency plans.
Right. And I think that leads really well into the next question, because you've been traveling for a long time. So how would you say has the world become more accessible since you've been traveling in terms of mobility aids and those kinds of things? How has it changed?
I think we've noticed significant change over time, that there are places that were notorious for being not very disabled friendly in the past that have tried really hard to change that. I think the best example I can think of immediately is Paris, which had an awful reputation in that respect years ago. And yet when we were there, and Trish had been there a long time ago before she was had her disability, and I kind of remembered it being not very accessible in those days. But when we went there, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, we found it had changed drastically. Not only were people trying hard to make things welcoming and accessible for us, but they had done a lot of retrofitting. There were very few places that we couldn't get into at all. Just some older buildings where it was just too difficult to retrofit them. And we understand that. But the public places were incredibly accessible. And in addition to their physical accessibility, just to show you how welcoming they are to disabled travelers, at the Louvre, there could be a long line of people waiting to buy tickets. You don't need a ticket. If you're in a wheelchair or scooter, you're not charged anything for entry, and you go right in without even needing ticket.
Oh,
Right to the
wow.
front door.
Yeah.
Wow.
At the Eiffel
you didn't know
Tower,
that.
same thing. At the Eiffel Tower, there's always a line a mile long, people waiting
Yes.
to ride up there.
Yeah.
We're preparing to get tickets and get in the line.
Getting in the line.
Yeah, and a guide comes over and says, "Oh, no, you don't need to do that. You don't need tickets. Follow me." And takes us to a separate elevator that's, for dignitaries and disabled people and, special people
Yeah,
that
and we're
are,
like, kind of like trying for people not to see us because they're just big.
yeah,
and
right.
we're just going right past them.
Yeah. But
I love that. I love
that
that.
kind of thing, I think, shows you how hard they're trying. Some things they can't overcome, like the subway system there, the metro. Just only some stations have elevators. And so you need to know in advance or avoid using it. We found that buses in Paris were all equipped with ramps. So that was a way better means of getting around. And there were lots of taxi cabs that were SUV type vehicles where you could load a scooter or wheelchair into the back. So we had no problems. But again, if we had planned on using the subway, we would have been terribly disappointed, frustrated. But we kind of knew that in advance from our research. So we just found other ways to get around, and it worked out terrifically.
And I guess I would advise anyone hoping to go to Paris, it is much more giving to a handicapped traveler. They really are. And
Yeah.
they want to help, handicapped travelers enjoy their city. And I think you just
Right.
remember that. And that because they're not the gruff Parisians that I remember.
Yeah, right.
Well, I went to the University of Bordeaux. So this we're talking like ancient history. And it was like, and it was horrible. Paris was awful. And they even spoke a different French. I mean, I spoke French with a Bordeaux accent, and I go to Paris and they would just like turn their nose up. They didn't want to hear me. But Paris is completely different now. And I would say have
Yeah.
no hesitation about going to Paris.
No. And even
That's
in
very encouraging.
places, from Paris, we went to Provence, and we explored all these medieval hill towns and places that you wouldn't expect would be accessible at all. And they're limited. There are places we couldn't go because of stairs or steep slopes and so on. But within reason, they had made things accessible to the point where I remember being at a restaurant or cafe in this one particularly steep hill town. And when Trish needed to use the restroom there, it was impossible to get to the public restroom without going downstairs. But the proprietor remembered, there's this other restroom around the back that the workers sometimes, let me show you. And, she took her there and it all worked out. It's just, as you were talking about attitude, well, it's not just the traveler's attitude, it's also the attitude of the people you're dealing with and how willing they are to assist you or help find ways to accommodate you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so awesome and great to hear that they are trying, that a lot of cities are trying. Yeah. So you've mentioned in the book that you've become quite adept at traveling on a plane with the scooter. So what tips do you have for someone who might be doing that for the first time?
Okay. Well, unfortunately, you have to go to the counter. You can't just check in at the sidewalk. So you go to the counter, and they see you driving up in your scooter, so they know you're going to need something. And you say, I need to drive my scooter to the door of the plane. So you want to try to get them to not try to take your mobility device away from you and send you to the plane and, some other device. So I always insist I need to take my scooter with me to the door. And on some planes, they're big enough, like an American Airlines, you can literally drive onto the airplane with it. And again, depends on the weight, the stewardesses and the people at the door. Some of them are, in fact, nowadays, most of them are very helpful, very amenable. So I think that's important to remember, that don't accept no. No is not the end of the conversation. It's just the beginning. Just the beginning, right?
But even when you're checking in at the ticket counter to begin with, there are some important things. They want to know, for example, the weight of the scooter.
Right.
Because it becomes a piece of baggage, right? It's going to be loaded into the baggage compartment of the plane. They want to know what kind of batteries you have, because some kinds are not allowed and some need to be disconnected before they're stored. So it's important to be able to say that they are sealed batteries. Nothing can leak from them. They're not prone to catching fire or anything like that. Because they don't like to store lithium oxide batteries in baggage, because there have been incidents of them catching fire. Fortunately, scooter and wheelchair batteries typically are not that tight.
Right.
But the negative thing to be aware of if you're going to be using a mobility device to get to the plane is that, so once you check it there at the door to the plane, you're not going to see it again until you get off the plane. And it often is one of the last things taken off. So you can plan on sitting for a while at your destination, waiting for the your scooter or wheelchair to arrive. And even if it gets there sooner, they still are going to make you wait while everyone else deplanes because you need assistance in getting off, and they want to hold everybody else up.
Yeah.
Typically these days they will have smaller wheelchairs they call aisle chairs to get you from the door to your seat and back
Right.
if you're not able to walk at all, which is now Trish's situation. Well, they don't always have those aisle chairs on the plane. A lot of planes, the larger planes typically do, but you can't count on it. And we had a unfortunate experience a couple of years ago landing in Munich, and for some reason an aisle chair, they didn't have one on the plane, and there wasn't one immediately available. So we had to wait and wait and wait, and the crew couldn't leave until were off. So everybody was getting pretty tired of this and irritated. And I finally convinced the captain to allow me to bring Trisha's scooter onto the plane, which was against their regulations. But he finally was so desperate to resolve the situation that he let me do it, and we got off and all went on our way. And they were grateful that we were able to solve that. But it's just, my point is just that, as with so many other things, be prepared for the unexpected. And sometimes it's just completely out of your control, and it's even out of the control of the people that you're dealing with. So everybody's got to be flexible and try to maintain a sense of a good humor about it to the extent you can.
And I hate to call it bribery, but one thing that we have found is Cary has this great, I call it bribery, but he always brings a nice box of like Godiva chocolates onto the plane with it and gives it to like the head stewardess or the head whatever, and says to her, him or her, I know when they see me, I know we may end up needing your help a little bit more than another passenger might. So I just wanted to thank you in advance. And they always love it. They don't consider it.
Of course they do.
They love it. They don't consider it bright. They really appreciate it.
Yeah, because very few people do that kind of thing. And so just the gesture is appreciated.
Yeah.
And they dote on us way more than they do on other passengers, even in first class. So it's it's well worth that $10 or $20 investment.
Yes. What is going through airport security like in mobility scooter?
Yeah, well, describe your typical experience.
It's not bad. I mean, it really isn't. Most airports provide for handicap access through security, separate from people just walking up. So in general, you will go through a separate door, a separate
you
gate.
will. I'll go through the regular
line,
line,
but
Trish will go through
separately. I have to wait for him on the other side. But yeah, they will. They'll take you through a separate gate, and they will wand you for the things that they run everybody else through an X-ray for. I can't think of an airport that didn't have that.
No, some are more efficient about it than others.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have security people that are more or less experienced in dealing with disabled travelers. So, sometimes it goes really quickly. Sometimes it takes a little longer, but it in our experience, it has not been a bad situation. It just, again, be patient, be a little flexible, but it works out fine.
And once you're through that security point, it's no different from anybody else.
Yeah. Until
Oh,
you're boarding the
But
plane.
then when you get to the
Right.
gate, when you're getting your boarding pass, they will definitely do two things for you. You make sure they understand that you need your wheelchair or you need your scooter at the door of the plane. At the door of the plane, that you cannot get off the plane without it. And
Right.
they're always good about that. They really are.
With one exception, we
Well-
only had one experience where they really screwed that up at the airport in Newark, where they, for some unknown reason, they delivered the scooter to baggage to the plane. And then we were sitting there on the plane while they searched for it, and eventually they took Trish in a wheelchair down to the baggage carousels, and we finally got reunited with their scooter. But other than that one experience where somebody just blew it, just didn't know what they were doing, it's always
Really good about it.
it's always worked out fine. The scooter gets delivered to the door of the plane, and then it's just a matter of whether we have to wait a little while other people are deplaning.
And they will tag it
Mhm.
for, it's like a stroller. I hate to make that comparison, but it's like a baby stroller.
Yeah.
A parent needs to bring the baby or small child to the door of the plane in their stroller. It's the same thing.
Yeah, they tag it and take it away.
Yeah.
But the one other thing that people should be aware of that's really helpful is that if you're going to have an extended layover, changing planes along the way, you can arrange to get your vehicle back at the interim stop if you want to. You have a choice. Typically, you can either check it all the way to your destination and just use one of the airport's manual wheelchairs at your interim stop, or you can ask to have it delivered to the plane at your first stop, use it there, you check it back in, and then get it again at your final destination. So that's pretty handy if you're going to be in an airport, especially a large airport, where you may need to move around a bit to find places to eat, or maybe your departure gate is quite a distance, maybe you're in a different terminal than the one you arrived at.
And always ask the people on your plane, how far is it from where our gate is to where you have to transfer?
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll say, oh, it's in the same terminal. And otherwise they'll kind of like roll their eyes and say, well, you better take the airports, whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
The one other thing that to keep in mind when traveling by air is that not every airport has jetways that come right up to the plane where you can simply roll off the plane.
Right.
And we've had several experiences, a couple of times on Caribbean islands, but also in Paris, if you can believe that, where simply because of the terminal that our plane got routed to for some reason, where they had to roll stairs up to the door of the plane and people walk down the stairs. Well, obviously we weren't going to be able to do that. And so the experience there really varies. If you're able to walk at all, they'll assist you down the stairs. If you simply can't walk at all, they may put you in an aisle chair and carry that down the stairs with you in it.
And they also have what they call a stair chair. That makes it a little easier.
You might be lucky enough to find that. One airport brought Trish down in the lift that they use to load food and stuff onto the plane. So you never know what they're going to want to do. But we had a funny experience arriving in Bonaire in the Caribbean, where there was a guy sitting across the aisle from Trish. He was a double leg amputee. And when we got to our destination, Trish is saying to me, God, I don't know how I'm going to get out of here because there's stairs, we're going to again have to somehow deal with that. And he hears her say that, and he leans over and he says, hey, they're going to get me out of here. It's going to be a lot easier for you.
They're gonna work it
Yeah,
out
yeah.
somehow.
Yeah.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
And he
Oh
was a
wow.
scuba diver.
yeah.
Oh, that's
So,
amazing.
yeah.
The
So
only other
that's,
thing I wanted
go ahead.
to talk about with scooters in terms of the flight aspect of it is, do you have to pay extra to take that with
No,
you?
no,
Oh, that's excellent.
no, you don't have to
Good
pay
to
extra
know.
for a baby stroller. You don't have to pay extra for a wheelchair or a scooter.
No, and that's a matter of
Excellent.
international agreement that all the airlines
Mhm.
comply with that. So that's nice. And it,
That is good to know.
regardless of the weight of they want to know what it weighs, but they're
Right.
not going to charge you extra as they would for overweight baggage, say.
Right,
Well, they
right.
want you to know the weight
And when you're
because someone, a guy, is going to bring your wheelchair, your scooter up to the door of the airplane. He's going to come up in some kind of an elevator of some type. And yet, so he has to carry it
Yeah.
on. And because they will not,
Right.
they won't operate it. Heck,
Yeah,
Right.
but it's also a matter of pilots are required to do what they call a weight and balance calculation before they can
Right.
take off. And so depending on the weight of
Mhm.
larger objects there, they may have to move things around in the cargo hold or
Okay.
whatever to make sure that the plane is properly balanced. So
right.
Mhm.
anyway,
Speaking of balance, how would you say that you balance what you both like to do while
hmm,
traveling? Because I know that when my husband and I go places, we're generally on the same page of things we like to see,
Mhm.
although mine might be a little more food oriented than his, or whatever the case might
mhm,
be.
Right.
But for you both, how do you both balance that?
Well, I guess the best example is when we go to an island, when we go to the Caribbean, Cary dives, and I don't scuba dive. So he'll go, and usually he leaves for his dives early in the morning. Well, I'll sleep in a little bit, and I will take my scooter or whatever to the dining where you eat, whether it's in a restaurant or usually it's by a pool or something. And so I'll sleep in, have breakfast, cup of coffee, whatever, and usually take a book or a magazine with you and entertain myself with that. Or sometimes it's just very pleasant, sitting by the pool under an umbrella or
Hmm.
whatever. I don't go to the beach because wheels don't do well in sand.
Right.
um, but
mhm.
and so I can totally entertain myself till noon. He's usually
Yeah,
back by noon.
yeah. But other than that, we
Yeah.
do everything together.
Mhm.
We typically we will have a rental car so that we can go exploring.
Mhm.
If we're on an island, we'll drive around the island. We'll check out whatever sites and activities there are together. If we're in a city, we may be walking around. We may be taking public transit, but
Mhm.
whether it's going to museums, restaurants, other kinds of sites
Mhm.
or activities, pretty much do everything together. The scuba diving being the one real exception to that.
Well, and then also don't be super disappointed if you'll be somewhere like we were in Provence. We were at the hill towns in Provence. These are really ancient cities, right? They're up in a really steep hillside, and the cities that were built hundreds of years ago. Well, they don't have any ability to deal with a wheelchair or anything, and we recognize that. You don't get mad about it. So what we'll do is I'll just find usually there's someplace pleasant to wait. So I'll just, find a cafe or, so Carol will know where I am, cafe or something. I'll
Mhm.
sit and then he'll just trek up the steep and hilly streets to the.
Yeah, typically we'll go as far as we can together,
Mhm.
and then
Right.
eventually we may hit an obstacle that's insurmountable. So at that point, maybe
Mhm.
Trish goes back and hangs out in a cafe. I might go up a little higher, up some stairs to take some photos or see another view or whatever. But that's pretty rare, actually, that that there are places you just flat out cannot get to.
Mhm.
So and when it does, again, you just be flexible and recognize that you're going to have those kinds of limitations sometimes.
Yeah. I'm wondering how travel insurance works for you both. Can you speak to that experience?
Travel insurance, we have never
We
used
don't
it.
buy it.
Yeah,
Wow. Okay.
Never.
maybe we should, but we've never had our travel plans seriously disrupted, other than one time when we were flying to Germany and had to make a connection in Atlanta, and
Oh, there's a
the
hurricane. There was
hurricane
a hurricane.
closed the airport for a
Mhm.
while, and we got rerouted and missed the
We
connecting
missed the
flight
connection.
and had this. So, and that kind of threw off our travel plans because we were going from Germany to the Czech Republic to Hungary, and but it only threw us off right at the beginning, and then we caught up. So, other than that one instance, we've actually never had a need for travel
What
insurance.
about health insurance? So
Yeah,
health
health
insurance
is a
while you
different
travel.
issue
Yeah.
because we're both on Medicare here in the U.S., and so that covers really pretty much all of our medical needs.
Mhm.
Now, out
Right.
Medicare does not apply outside the U.S. in most respects. We have been fortunate enough not to have had any outside the U.S. medical
Mhm.
issues. But one thing that we do that's kind of a stopgap thing in case of a real disaster is that through an organization I belong to as a diver, I have insurance that can apply to her as well, that will provide for emergency airlifting home in the event of an accident or illness, even if it's not diving related. So if
Okay.
she had a real serious issue and had to be transported home, we have that as a backstop.
But it's called
Right.
Dan.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's a well-known divers organization, and so that's for people who
mhm.
uh, can qualify for that. That's a great thing. Now, in most countries, though, healthcare is not nearly as expensive as it is in the
Right.
U.S.
Right.
And so we frankly have just taken the chance that if we needed health care someplace outside the here, it would not be that expensive. The one time we had to do that was on the island of Grand Turk, where Trish
Mm.
injured her foot and we had to go to a medical clinic.
Mhm.
And they charged us nothing for the doctor's services and about $3 for the antibiotics. And that was it.
Your minds must have been blown.
Yeah, so
Well,
it's
and that's important because I think for your other viewers to do a little checking before you leave. Find out what that country's approach is to medical care.
yeah.
It all everything we've discovered is it always applies to visitors. They've never treated us differently from, a local resident.
Uh-huh.
And
Even
they,
if it's just filling a prescription at a
yeah,
pharmacy, if you have
Right.
a prescription that appears legitimate, they'll fill it. I mean, they'll charge you something more than they would a local person, but it's still
mhm,
very doable.
yeah,
So I think our advice is not necessarily don't bother with health insurance.
mhm,
If you're more comfortable having it, by all means. And most
Yeah.
private health insurance will apply
right.
while you're traveling anyway. There may be some restrictions on it, but it generally does apply outside the country. Medicare is a different issue. And so if you're on Medicare, you just have to make a judgment call as to what kind of, do you want to purchase extra health insurance privately for your trip or what you want to do. As I say, in our case, maybe we've just been lucky. We haven't had a problem to date.
I will
Well,
say
that,
that you have been lucky for sure. That's
Yeah.
excellent. Excellent
yeah.
for you. Is there anything that you pack, of course, outside of your scooter, in particular to make travel easier for you?
Yeah. I was thinking, when I wrote this question, I was reading your book, and I think you mentioned that you brought some grab bars
Oh
that
yeah,
you
yeah,
were
yeah.
able
Yes.
to stick. Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. So I thought that was a really great
That's
tip. I didn't know they
it.
existed,
You can
so I think that's a great
go to
tip.
your local. If you got every town, every city has some sort of store that sells crutches. That has crutches and walkers and things like
Hmm.
that. And almost always they have portable handbars. Things that
Okay.
will. They have suction cups. Usually they just have you put them against uh, a tile wall and pull out, a thing that suctions it, suctions it to.
Yeah, and we carry those kinds of things with us routinely that grab
Yeah.
bars in case a hotel doesn't have them. And just other little devices that we have found to be useful based on our experience.
And again, you have to
Hmm.
call the hotel ahead of time and find out how is the bathroom situated. Does it have tile
Hmm.
walls? Does it have tile
Hmm.
walls? And this is really hard. You have to ask them, are the tiles square? And they need to be like 4 inches not little,
Right,
not the
right,
little bitty, 1 inch tiles, because the suction cups won't work on grout. So you need a smooth,
right.
Yeah,
and they do not work on a wall.
plaster walls or
Plaster, and
something.
they don't
Yeah,
work on
yeah.
drywalls. I mean, drywall will just pull it right off.
So this again goes back to our earlier discussion about doing your research very precisely,
Yeah.
just not
Hmm.
leaving to chance anything that you can think of to ask about. But you mentioned that experience with the restaurant where they carried Trish up the stairs, and uh, fortunately there were only 3 or 4 steps there. We've had other experiences where we got to a restaurant and it was on the second floor, didn't know there wasn't an elevator. It was an old building. This happened to us in 2 places in Dublin, two
Yeah.
restaurants we tried to go to in the same evening. One was upstairs, one was downstairs, and neither had an elevator.
Right.
So the scooter or wheelchair travel, you're gonna uh, have some restrictions like that other people don't have to
Mhm.
contend with. But even there, we found a solution. So looking at it as a companion, that
Mhm.
wheelchair travel or scooter travel in most respects doesn't have to be that different from anybody else's travel. As it's just requires a little more preparation, a little more flexibility, and ultimately a willingness to accept sometimes things aren't
Yeah.
going to go the way you want,
Mhm.
and you're going to have to go to
Right.
plan
Yeah.
B.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So I'd like for you to tell me about the process of writing your
Mhm.
book on two legs and three wheels. Did you have travel journals that you were consulting? I loved reading about your travels. I'm about halfway through the book. I loved reading all the
Mm,
details and really highlighting the locations while
yeah.
also mentioning your experiences with the
hmm
accessibility.
No, I don't keep journals, but I take a lot of
Oh,
photographs, and those
okay.
are my reminders
Mhm.
when I'm writing, especially when I was writing this book. For each chapter,
Yeah.
I went back and looked at all the photos of the places
Mhm.
that we went in that location. And I have a pretty good memory for details to begin
Mhm.
with. So once I had the prompt of seeing, say,
Right.
a photo of a particular place, then the details would
Yeah.
generally come back to me.
Mhm.
And so I know a number of people have commented on the appreciating the details in the book
Mhm.
because it made the locations more vivid, more alive to them. And at least for me, it was those photos that made that possible. I know some travelers keep detailed journals, whether they write anything or not, they just do it for their own future reference.
Mhm.
I haven't done that, but as I say, the photos have worked really well for me.
Yeah, I kept a
Yeah,
written
that's
journal
great.
when I was in college, when I was in France and did a lot of traveling around Europe before I came home. And I never looked at them again.
No.
I
Yeah.
looked at my pictures and that helped me remember,
Yeah.
Right.
oh yeah. But I don't think I
Oh,
ever looked at the journals again.
that's so funny. I think you can see it in the
Uh-huh.
video. My journal is right
Uh-huh.
here. I used it for the last episode Megan and I recorded was about the Bahamas, so I had to go back and read my journals to remind myself. So
Right.
I think you have a better memory than I do.
That's and the way that we do it, I don't do a journal either, but my husband takes a lot of travel videos,
Oh,
so
okay.
we always have
Well,
those. Yeah, we have those to refer back
that's
to.
nice.
So it's
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. I do want to dive into this always something, Jen and I love to hear about, and that is what travel destinations are still on your list? Like, where do you still want to go?
When talking about that, where do we want to go next?
Well, it's a little bit difficult to answer that because after our last flying trip, Trish got a lot sicker, developed a blood infection as a result of a treatment she was receiving. It was very unexpected, and that weakened her considerably. And so since then, we haven't been in a position to be away from home for extended periods of time. But what we're now going to experiment with is driving trips, which we've done in the
Okay.
past. Some of those are described in the book,
Okay.
but I think we're going to try that more now. We need to travel with more equipment now than we needed to in the past, which makes some of which really can't go on an airplane, but it could go on a cruise ship.
Right.
So we're now exploring whether cruise lines will let us bring some of this equipment aboard, which I hoping they will, in which case we may cruise, which we've done a couple of times and had pretty good experiences with that. Whether we do that or not, there's lots of places that are within a day's drive from here. I mean, California is a big state. There's a lot of places you can go that are far
Yes.
from home, but still within reasonable distances. Or Arizona, we've enjoyed going to the Grand Canyon in Arizona a number of times. We may go back there. So yeah, there's lots of options. You don't need to fly everywhere. And
Well, another thing that we made a point of is going to every national park that we could drive to.
yeah,
And there's a
Awesome.
lot that you can drive to.
yeah, national
Great.
parks or even big state parks in California. Yeah.
So we've had a great time, and they're always helpful for someone in a wheelchair or mobility,
Great.
challenged.
Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome to hear. So, before we say our goodbyes, where can people find out more about your book and buy the book?
Well, the book is available from all the major booksellers. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, from the publisher directly, Black Rose, and any bookstore can order it. These days, the process is so simplified. So the book's readily available. If people have questions about disabled travel beyond the stories that I tell in my book, there are other books out there that I would call more like how to do it books. They're not stories, but they're more like just advice for disabled travelers. Some of them relate specifically to cruising, some relate to visiting very specific places, like a national park or a particular city. So there's lots of resources, also websites that are dedicated to disabled travel. There are a few travel agencies that specialize in assisting disabled travelers. We've had mixed experience with that, but still, for some people, it's very useful. There's lots of information out there, but if you're just looking for good stories that also tell you a lot based on our experiences, I hope people will read my book, and if they want to contact me, they can do that through my website. And I'm happy to answer questions and suggest other resources for people.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on our podcast and for talking to us. I like I said, I'm halfway through the book, so I'll finish it soon. But I think what I've taken away from it so far is a lot of hope that no matter what happens in the future, that I'll still be able to travel in some way, shape, or form, and that there's always a way to make it work if you have an attitude that let's figure this out. And I'm really grateful that you reached out.
No, you're welcome. And if I may just toss in one more brief anecdote to demonstrate what you were just saying about the attitude and willingness to try new things. I think that's the most important thing too. The best example of that would be the trip that we took to Alaska some years ago, and that's written up in the book, where we had started out just planning to take a cruise down the Alaskan coast from Anchorage down to Vancouver, and then found that the cruise line offered a land component to the trip as well, where we were able to go by train from Anchorage to Denali National Park and then on to Fairbanks, which is right in the middle of the state. That's where the rail line ends. There we transferred to a bus and rode for 2 days on a dirt highway over the Brooks Range, a pretty big mountain range, on a road that had been put in when the Alaska pipeline was being constructed. So that road took us all the way to the Arctic Ocean at Prudhoe Bay, to the charmingly named town of Dead Horse, with an overnight stop along the way in an equally charming town called Coldfoot. But when we got to the Arctic Ocean, it was even there, Trish could get around fairly easily, except maybe going out onto the beach there at the ocean. And they were so impressed with her getting there and her tenacity in doing all this that the hotel we stayed at, I use that term euphemistically, the accommodations we stayed at gave her a certificate reading "First Scooter to the Arctic Ocean," because they'd never seen one before.
They never seen one.
So I just used that.
The oil workers, and the oil workers were like totally checking it out.
Oh yeah, they were fascinated with it. But I used that kind of as a final explanation or example of just how far you can go if you're willing to try, if you're flexible, and are flexible enough to deal with all those, impediments that you're likely to run into along the way, but that you have to believe can be solved. So I think that I'll close with that.
Great. Thank you. That is a great spot to end the episode. So as always, for us at the Travel Mug Podcast, our listeners can find us on our website, travelmugpodcast.com, where we'll have a link to the book as well. You can find us also on social media, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at Travel Mug Podcast.
Right.
And thank you so much for coming on.
Well,
thank you.